Well, good evening. I hope everybody's doing okay. Welcome to another episode of Embrace Live. So it's a Wednesday, 8 o'clock thereabouts. We're just a little bit after, actually. And so it's another time for another episode. So we've been doing this. I've just been looking, actually, just as the countdown was on. We've been doing this for, I think this is the 21st or 22nd episode. All right, which is amazing. So, we tend to do them each week, which is great. We've got a load of different guests. I'm really excited, actually, because, again, I've just reached out to a lot of my friends, across the country and said, would you like to come and feature, be a guest one week? And it's great that lots of them have come back and said, yeah, we'd love to. So if first time you're tuning in, welcome. My name's Dave Dixon. I have the privilege of being part of Embrace Church in Darlington, which is a part of the Taking Ground Church family. And it's great that I get to, obviously serve over there in lots of different ways. And Embrace, Live came about, obviously, as many churches had to find new ways of kind of meeting together and sharing, the gospel and so on during lockdown periods and so on. And we did that so well as Embrace, but then we wanted to kind of continue that. Now we're able to meet again together. And so we've kind of come up with this kind of format each week, going live, obviously, via the Embrace Church Darlington Facebook page. And then we upload them afterwards as well to our YouTube channel, just so people can do the kind of catching up side of things. We'd love, as always, and a few people have done that tonight, which is great, to make this as interactive as possible. I'm really excited to welcome our guest tonight, which is Peter Conroy. Let me just head over to him just to give you a little sneaky preview. Are you all right? How are you doing, Peter?
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah.
Good to be with you tonight.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight and kind of giving up a bit of your time, which is great. Do I call you Peter or Pete? I never know.
Pete's fine, yeah.
Pete's fine. All right, I might need to change the banner a little bit later on. So Pete's joining us, obviously, tonight. He's a guy who's involved in many, many things. So we're looking forward to hearing your story and what you're up to and how God's moving through what you're doing in the region, all right? So we'll talk to you in a little while, come back to you then. But it's great, obviously, to be able to kind of meet and get to know a little bit better, kind of, Pete and many others as well. Like I said, I'm really excited about the people that we've got coming up. We've actually so far got booked right through to the end of March, so that's good. We're going to have a little break in between Christmas and New Year, which is brilliant, but I'm really excited, and I've still got a long list of people that I've made the invite to that are yet to kind of find a date that works for them. So welcome, thank you for joining in so far tonight. Just to say hello to Alan, who's joined us as well, Mr. Fraser himself, Mike Connolly, which is always good. Hello, Sue, and Bill as well. Thank you for joining us tonight. I can see that you're coming up on the monitor and messaging, which is great. And Radek as well, thanks very much for joining in tonight. Great to have you with us, okay? And so, as always, we want to make this interactive. Please, 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 post your comments and your questions for Pete as we kind of go through and we chat together tonight, because we want to take time out to kind of answer those. We want to make it an interactive experience, more the merrier in terms of questions. The harder the better. I'm sure Pete would have no problem answering all those deep theological kind of questions that have got burning. I can see you smiling on my other monitor here, so that's all right. You can see what's going on. He's just monitoring. I can tell as well he's monitoring Facebook just to see who's posting. So we want to make sure that we have plenty of love, post the love for Pete, and see where we want to go to tonight. So, as always, this is part of the Leaders series. Loads of fantastic people that I have the privilege of knowing in different ways and meeting and doing, kind of stuff with them across the church. And let me say again, I like to say this each week, really. There's only one church, and that's God's church. And, with a capital C. And we are all different, again, flavours, meeting in different areas and, kind of living out the Bible-based teaching in different ways. And so it's great to be able to kind of meet with other people and hear, obviously, their stories and so on. So let's go into the leaders intro and then let's get across to Pete and let's, just have a chat with him and see what, where we get to tonight. Okay, here we go. And here we go. Hello, Pete. Are you all right? You're on camera now.
good,
You can
thanks.
smile. You doing okay?
Yeah, fine, yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, Pete, you're a person I've known for quite a number of years. I've kind of come across you in different kind of settings and things like that. But I'm really looking forward to kind of get to know a lot more about you and the things you're involved with, because I know you're a busy fella, aren't you?
Yeah, can be.
Yeah, and you're involved
Sometimes more than others, but yeah, definitely, yeah.
And you're involved in lots of different kind of things,
doors.
really, aren't you? So, it'd be great to kind of hear a bit of your story, maybe how you came to know Jesus yourself and kind of make that decision to be a Jesus follower. And, I'm always conscious that, there might be people that who maybe don't do the church thing, maybe have stumbled across this in YouTube or on Facebook Live in one of the streams kind of thing. And I know that you have got a real heart and a passion. You're an evangelist, aren't you? And, so I know that we won't get into the churchy speak too much here, because it can be a bit confusing, can't it, on occasion, if you don't do the church thing. What do you think? Yeah. So, it'd be great to just kind of, first of all, why don't you give us a bit of your kind of background, a bit of your story, who are you? Tell us a bit about who you are, and then maybe we can get into the, the kind of, how did you become a Christian? How did you give up, kind of make that decision and come to know Jesus for yourself? So who are you, first of all, Pete?
Yeah. Well, I was born in Middlesbrough.
Come on.
I'm 57 years old.
Never. A man of your energy.
Although I feel it now. So I was the youngest of 9 kids. So big family.
Wow, yeah, 9 kids. Wow.
So big family, which was always great at Christmas, because I had older brothers and sisters who were working, and which meant, I got a bit spoiled. I think youngest children do, don't they?
Yeah, that's good. So what have you got, like, how many brothers, sisters you got?
So I've got 4 brothers. Well, saying that, 4 brothers, 4 sisters.
Yeah.
I'd like to say with certainty that 2 of my sisters and 1 of my brothers are in heaven.
Right.
Yeah. That's a story in itself, which I won't go into. But they're all the 3 of them actually made commitments to Christ, which was good.
Fantastic.
My mum and dad passed away some 14 years ago.
Right.
But they had, I think, 24 grandchildren.
Wow.
So it's a big family.
Yeah.
And there's lots of great grandchildren now that I wouldn't be able to keep up.
Yeah.
The numbers. But I'm married to Helen. Some of you know my wife, Helen. And who also has worked a lot with me in ministry, and works in a primary school as a parental support advisor. Works with the parents.
Does she? Is that local?
She knows you, John, Dave. She knows you through at St John's.
The Baptist?
C.V. primary school.
The Baptist? St John the Baptist?
St John's on Ragworth.
In Ragworth, yeah, St John the Baptist, yeah. Right. I hadn't realised that. I better be on my best behaviour now. I haven't been in that school for a while.
You might come across a Helen Conroy.
Yeah, well, there you go.
She's seen you there a few times anyway.
Yeah.
So we have 6 children, and 3 boys, 3 girls.
Yeah.
And 4 grandsons.
Right. Fantastic. Just to say that we've got a few people kind of joining us already, so just to kind of put a few comments on screen that we've had. Obviously, I've asked people to show you the love already, so it's great that we've got that. Obviously, people joining us from different, and the mighty as well, because I describe you mighty, so I'm going to describe John as well. On there, Pastor Pete, he's the Rock. Okay, as in like the American wrestler. Is that what it means? Because you look similar. I think. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I was with John last night in Newcastle Connect, and had a great night.
Yeah.
Up in, the only problem was getting there because of the Newcastle match.
Right.
But I managed to get there, and I managed to find a parking space after about an hour.
Fantastic. Well, all I would say to John is, John, you're on my hit list. I've messaged you, so I need a date from you, sir, because obviously we'd love to have you as part of Embrace Live on here and stuff. So, please get back to me with a date that we can do, and I'll take the pressure off. I'll stop stalking you then and spamming you all the time. There we go. So fantastic. So, big family. You keep yourself busy as well with 6 kids and grandkids and that kind of thing. Obviously, what about tell us a bit of your story then about how you kind of came to that point where you made a decision to follow Jesus. What was kind of happening about that time?
Well, my mother was more of a traditional Christian.
Right.
She went to a high Anglican church in Middlesbrough, and we all went to church when we were little. But when I was old enough to say I didn't want to go, which was about the age of 11, 12,
Yeah.
I stopped going. But do you know what? It served its purpose all those years, because when I found myself in a crisis at the age of 17, 18, I don't need to go into details because we've got all night, but basically I was controlled by a guy who worked on the oil rigs,
Right.
who was 30 years old and a bit of reputation. I was drawn in by his, friendship. He gave me money to go on the fruit machine. I was a bit addicted to fruit machines. I tried to back off from this guy because I thought he was getting a bit controlling.
Yeah.
And then realised that I had a problem because he started to, looking back, it was a form of grooming, really.
Right.
And controlled my life. And if I tried to back away, he got violent. And I should have looked for help from my parents because I was in a good home. But you think you don't want to cause trouble. You don't want to look as though there's anything seriously wrong. You think things are going to get better, but actually they get worse. Before you know it, you're in a mess. So I was in a deep crisis. But I cried out to a God who, hey, those years as a kid, some of those prayers and the Anglican service, I remembered a lot of the prayers in the Book of Common Prayer and things like that, and the communion, but they stuck with me, and even after 5-6 years, and so I cried out to God, and do you know what? I'd find myself praying in a graveyard in Acklam. This was sort of centered around the Tollesby area. I don't know if you know Tollesby. I cried out. I would spend hours praying and crying out to God for help, not really knowing if anyone was hearing at first. But that's where I found real peace. That's where I knew that something was helping me. I couldn't put my finger on it. I didn't quite understand the gospel. Didn't really know who Jesus was.
Right.
Even though, it was all a bit vague.
Yeah.
But eventually I went to hear a guy called Billy Graham at Roker Park in 1984.
Yeah.
At the age of 19. And it was like a jigsaw puzzle coming together, because by this time I hadn't really gone to church. I didn't have a clear understanding of the gospel. I had a vague recollection of an Anglican service as a little kid.
Yeah.
But apart from that, knew nothing.
Yeah.
But that's when Billy Graham spoke the gospel and who Jesus was and why he came, and that he gave his life for me on the cross so that I could have a new life. It was like a jigsaw puzzle coming together. So when he invited people to come onto the pitch and give their life to Jesus, and there was 20,000 people there each night.
Yeah.
And it was an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Amazing.
And don't get me wrong, I still was controlled by this man to some extent.
Okay.
Probably for probably about 18 months, all in all. And I then shared this problem with people in a church called St. Barnabas.
Yeah.
In Acklam.
Yeah.
that was the church I was referred to in a nurture group.
Yeah.
And 96 people got referred to that church.
Wow.
It's a lot of people, isn't it?
It is.
It was probably, the congregation itself wouldn't have been much more than that.
Yeah.
96 people.
Wow.
And two of the others were Terry and Ann.
Right.
Terry and Ann Young.
Yeah.
I already knew Terry from when I was at college.
Yeah.
But I got a shock when I saw him there.
I like, obviously we like to just kind of obviously see what people are posting as well as a few kind of hellos. I didn't know this as well. It was only at Connect, which we'll talk about a little bit. Stockton Connect. We'll talk about that. When you mentioned that the other week, but I didn't know that. This is what Mike's asking now. Because I was also at Roker Park. That's where I'm. Giving my life to Jesus. I went
in '84.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, and I went with a few mates with mine who were kind of. My dad was actually in the choir singing. And I was kind of, so I was going to see my dad, but I also went with the intention of just to get down on the pitch and, create a bit of bother, if I can, rip up the turf and just all those kind of things. But, I ended up giving my life to Jesus. So, it was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. So, that's where Mike's coming from with that, kind of Roker Park reunion kind of thing, which is amazing.
Good, yeah. Well, I went back again. I think I went twice that week.
Sure, I understand.
Oh.
I think it was 5 nights, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I went. I wouldn't know which night I went initially, but I definitely went back a couple of nights later. They were running buses from St. Barnabas Church.
Yeah.
And I went back again. So
fantastic.
So it changed my life. I mean,
yeah.
But from there, as I say, I still had this problem. But I shared. That's why the church is so important, because I got involved with a men's Bible study. And a few really great guys there who really helped me and supported me.
Great.
I shared their problem with them, and they prayed with me and give me the strength to stand up to this guy.
Yeah.
Which I didn't have in the natural. Because he's a very violent man. And they give me the strength to stand up to him, and that's when I really faced the issue.
Yeah.
And with their support, I broke free from this guy, and so
fantastic.
I had a choice then to go back to my old life of going out drinking with the lads, and by this stage I was about 19 years old, and do you know what? It was the easiest decision I've ever made in my life to follow Jesus, because he made such an impact on me. If I ever sort of like say where does the energy come from in serving God, a lot of it is from the fact that I was at death's door. I was suicidal.
Right.
And I was in a mess. I was in a crisis. And Jesus came down and met me and transformed my life. Amazing. And when people say that, it really is real to me.
Yeah.
Because I was at death's door.
Yeah.
And I was in a crisis like I'd never been in before. And you know what? I've been in some crises since then, but nothing like that. And that's what catapulted me into a life of serving him.
Right.
And
brilliant.
And it's it's had its ups and downs, but it's been a privilege.
Yeah. Fantastic. Just before we go any further, are you? It looks like you're actually at sea because your screen keeps moving around. I don't know whether you're kind of tapping your foot or something like that on your laptop or something like that, but it just kind of moves up and down.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So if you could not breathe for the rest of the episode and keep still, that'd be great. No, that's fine. So that's all right. So I mean, obviously, that was a transformational, like you say, experience from yourself, and the importance of that men's Bible study group to support you in breaking free from that guy who had such a hold over you. That's amazing in itself. What an amazing story that is, and again shows the importance of church family and like I say, to lean upon them, to have support, and we all need absolutely those support in those times when because life is up and down, and like you say, moving maybe, a number of crises within your kind of life and so on, and so I love the word that you said, catapulted. I love that. That's amazing. So obviously you've had this transformational moment, giving your life to Jesus. Meeting at Roker Park and so on, and then coming back to St Barnabas and being with Terry and Anne and obviously as well. How did your life look like then? So you said catapulted and transformation. What did you move into then? Because
Yeah.
what was it, about 19? Did you say that you were at this point roughly?
Yeah, about 19. I was working for I was a retail manager in a news agency
Oh
called
yeah,
Finley's. You might remember that.
right,
In Middlesbrough Town Centre, I managed the one opposite the town hall on Corporation Road.
right. Busy then,
But I wasn't happy in that.
right?
I think because of my experience in finding God and being part of the local church,
Hmm.
and um, and so I wanted to push some doors really.
Yeah,
So, but I also got involved while I was at the church. I got involved with an ecumenical sort of group of young people that used to meet in the John Paul Centre, Catholic Centre
right. Okay.
in Middlesbrough, because even though Terry initially came to that those nurture groups at St Barnabas, he was still very much involved in the Catholic Church, and so was Anne.
Okay.
And they introduced me to another guy called Martin Ruddock,
Okay.
and we used to meet together along with one or two others and pray in the John Paul Centre in Middlesbrough. And this And they used to. I lived in the flat above St Barnabas Church Hall,
All right.
and we also used to pray there. And people would come from different churches. Young people encountered the power of God, were transformed, and soon we were too big for the flat, and we moved. As I say, we moved into a meeting at the John Paul Centre, and we used
Amazing.
to meet on a Saturday night, and we would get up to 100 young people eventually, over a period
Fantastic.
of time, and God was moving, and we were all as green as grass and just thought this was normal church. No.
Amazing.
And, eventually a lot of those people moved on and now are leaders in the church. Martin running the church, and Terry and Anne, leaders in the church,
Yeah.
and many others as well. And, you know, uh, we eventually left the Church of England. I met my wife at one of those meetings, Helen.
Yeah.
And then we joined St Aidan's Church, which is now MCC.
Right.
And because Terry and Martin had also done that, they'd left the Catholic Church and gone to MCC. So we all started going then. But as I said, there was something in me that wanted to do something more than be a retail manager.
Yeah.
So I'd tried a few doors and nothing seemed to open up. Working I wanted to work with young people who were in need.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
tried all sorts of things, probation, and things like that. And eventually, Teen Challenge came to the Tabernacle in Stockton.
Okay.
I don't know if you have heard of Teen Challenge. It's a rehabilitation program all over the world that was set up by David Wilkerson, who wrote Cross and Switchblade.
Yes. Yeah.
So he
Let me just
started
stop
in
you
the
there. Every time we do a name drop, I've got a sound effect for that. Here we go. There we go. So every time David Wilkinson, there we go. So every time you drop a name, there we go. Did you hear my honk? There we go. I don't get out much. Sorry about that. There we go.
So they'd come to Stockton,
Yeah.
because they wanted to establish an outreach in the Teesside area, because particularly in areas where drug addiction was a major problem, and Teesside was one of them, really. So the churches got together and headed up by, I don't know if you remember, Patrick Hinton,
Yes.
who used to run a chain of supermarkets called Hinton's.
Yeah.
And he made me the coordinator for that work. But I left my job I was married to Helen with 3 kids, but God clearly spoke to us that He'd provide.
Wow.
It was a faith ministry, no
Mm.
wages, couldn't even claim dole because I was on a
Right.
course. The church had a collection for us, which paid the fees for the year's course, and we just trusted God. We had money coming through the letterbox.
Wow.
We had people supporting us on a monthly basis. Patrick obviously was supporting us as well, and God just provided miraculously.
Fantastic.
So I went down to Wales for that for 3 months at the School of Evangelism, came back, and then we started Teen Challenge Teesside with Patrick, with a bus going out onto the streets of Middlesbrough and Stockton with this bus, double decker bus that was converted into a coffee bar, and we'd take it late at night. This is sort of like from about 97 time,
Yeah.
and lots of people would come on the bus. The first person we met on the first night we went out was a man called Graham Seed, and he was the worst alcoholic I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
He used to sit on a bench outside a post office, and I tell you, he was unbelievable. He used to drink 7 2-litre bottles of White Lightning a day.
Wow.
And, that's
Yeah.
like the strongest side he can
Yeah.
get.
We've
And
actually
he
got
was
fingers crossed. We've got Graham booked in. Hopefully, towards the end of this month.
great.
But
Great.
there's a bit of a kind of question mark over that, really. But at some point, Graham is going to
Yeah,
feature
yeah.
on here. We're going to hear his
Amazing, powerful
story.
story.
Yeah.
As I say, a lot of you will know the fact that he ended up in a coma and everything, his whole body had shut down, and his mother had been given the forms to sign to switch the machine off twice. We'd found out he'd gone into hospital, and 3 of us went in, prayed for him when he woke up,
Wow.
and we didn't. At the time, we thought we was just woke up. I didn't know. But then we were explained to that he'd been in a coma for a length of time, and that he was, as I say, it was just the machine that was keeping him alive. God had miraculously healed him, restored him.
Fantastic.
That was a miracle.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, people say, "Wow, what a miracle!" I say the bigger miracle was that he never touched any more drink, he never touched any more drugs, he never touched even a cigarette. He
Wow.
went on an Alpha course, and it transformed his life. I just saw him getting interviewed by J. John the other day.
Yeah.
And it's just a powerful story. He's wrote the book, hasn't he? And
Yeah.
it's gone all over the world. I work in the prisons now, and the amount of people that have read that book and say, "Have you any contact with Christianity before?" I read a book once by a guy called Graham Seed.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's that many copies of it in the prisons, and it's impacted so many people. So as I say, I work with this organisation
Yeah.
called Teen Challenge, and we, don't get me wrong, that you had someone like Graham, but I mean, working with that end of addiction,
Yeah.
it can be challenging.
Yeah.
It can be frustrating. It can be, and the amount of people that we saw go to rehab, come back, seem to be doing well, and then slip back into their old habits. And, a couple of them overdosed and died, people that we knew really well. It was I think I found that quite hard
Yeah.
because
Not
some of them I
surprised.
really got close to.
Yeah.
And I felt challenged by God, really, because by this stage, this was about early 2000s, so it would have been about 2002. I was just sort of saying, I felt God was saying I needed to move on.
Right.
And although I'd felt the call of God to work with the poor,
Yeah.
particularly a particular verse in the scriptures about turning the poor into princes, and that was particularly always stuck with me all my life.
Yeah.
But I felt God challenge me about working with the poor because I was working with the high end of addiction, which was heroin and serious alcohol addictions, referring them to rehab. And we saw some great, powerful conversions as well. Joe Shepherdson,
Yeah.
some of you know Paula Devine.
Yeah.
And so we'd seen a lot of changed people, and God was working, but I just felt as though that there was a lot of poor people that weren't sort of serious addiction, that live
Mm.
on these council estates. Who's reaching them?
Yeah.
Who's going into Hardwick? Who's going into Grove Hill? Who's working with single parents?
Yeah.
That, and my heart was always to pray for God to move and to bring change.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is over a long period of time, but we looked into the message, which is Eden down in
Yeah.
Manchester. We do these Eden projects where they move people into rough estates,
Yeah.
and bring transformation from the inside rather than trying to do it from the outside.
Yeah,
Uh,
Terry's already, when he featured on Embrace Live, he told us about some involvement with that, and obviously explained about the Eden Project a little bit more, and his involvement with that currently, and things. So yeah, yeah, amazing,
so
amazing.
eventually, me and my wife started an Eden project in Ragworth that's now based at the Shack.
Yeah,
We have a community grocers there. Paul Connor got saved and his wife Sue, and through that work.
amazing.
Um, so that was, and then recently we've just planted an Eden in Shaftesbury Street in Stockton that Steve and Vanessa
Yeah,
Sewell run.
yeah,
Well, that's very much my heart, really, to see these poor estates, and the transforming of lives that are just not going anywhere.
yeah, yeah,
It's just so sad. You just need to get to, and it's the gospel that penetrates. It's living the gospel
mm,
amongst the people
mm,
and being in it for the long haul. I always find
yeah,
that's the beauty of Eden. It's being in it for the long haul, of working with families and young people that need that continuity of being there, whether they're up or down, or whether there's which I think is hard to do in mainstream church.
yeah. Why?
I
Why do
think
you think that?
by doing it on the estate,
Mm,
you eventually, we find with some of them, find some spiritual stability
mm,
that is it's got to be learnt
yeah,
as well as received.
yeah.
So yeah,
Amazing, obviously just your heart then, just for the lost and the broken, and obviously the addiction, but those who are just the masses really, who are living in like you said, the poor circumstances, and whereas, and just getting alongside them, and obviously motivated, passionate enough, should I say, is probably a better word, to go and get involved in these places. And like you say, one of the questions I normally ask is, when being involved in an organisation, what kind of impacts it's having, what kind of results. But you've mentioned already so many kind of people's names that you can see that,
yeah,
you said it's the gospel that actually impacts the thing, but again, just people's lives being
yeah.
transformed and come to know Jesus themselves. Yeah,
Well, it's like Paul, who heads up the Eden Project in Ragworth at the Shack.
yeah,
We got to know him through doing a kids club on the estate.
right,
My wife and my kids running a kids club
yeah,
in St John's School,
right,
and we got, and then part of that was following up the kids in their homes
mm,
during the week, and that's how we got to know Paul and Sue.
yeah,
And then they came on a residential weekend, and we involved Julie Parker with CAP, and we did a little talk there, and it really impacted them and other people that came along.
yeah,
So to cut a long story short, he eventually came along, went on the Daniel Challenge in our church, and which was a year's course, discipleship course,
yeah,
and now he's heading up the Eden in Ragworth, and
yeah,
we have a community grocers there in the Shack
yeah,
that through the message which Terry must have
yeah.
mentioned
He
as
did.
well.
Yeah, yeah,
And but then I felt a draw and a call to Central Stockton,
right.
um, because I've had a long-standing link with Brian and Stella Jones,
Yes.
I was involved with them at Tees Valley Community Church many years ago, and we were reaching out to Hardwick. They were involved with Teen Challenge, helping us on the bus in Stockton. And I'd lost contact a little bit with them, but then regained that contact about 4 years ago.
Right.
We started to pray together. They'd just moved to the new building on Alma Street. They were looking to do a service on a Thursday night.
Yeah.
Sorry, on one night in the week. We just chose Thursday. But I'd got involved with the Connect
Yeah.
communities that are all over the northeast now. I don't know if that's so. Dave, you help, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, I'm absolute
Worship.
privilege it is to and Brian and Stella have also featured on Embrace Live, and again, I'd really encourage if you to kind of anybody watching this, if you want to, obviously you can always go back and watch them again. So it's really well worth listening to Terry's story, and again the work of Eden and so on, and certainly Brian and Stella over the Moses Project and stuff. So actually Brian and Stella have been long standing friends of my my mother in particular, and so it was quite an interesting one. So it was lovely to kind of be reunited with those wonderful couple that they are. And yeah, so tell us about Connect, because I love going to Connect.
Yeah.
That you've the privilege of being able to kind of, with good friends Mike and Liz Connolly, often lead worship as part of that meeting and stuff. And it's just an absolute privilege to be able to do that. But it's a privilege to meet the different people who are coming along and get alongside them, and just to be able to kind of get to know people that way as well. So tell us about the kind of Connect, because you mentioned obviously there's a few of them across the northeast. So how did they kind of come about then? What's your involvement?
They were started probably between 8 and 10 years ago in Newcastle, Junction 42. There were an organisation that came out of Youth for Christ that were working in the prisons in the northeast.
Yeah.
That headed up by Joanne O'Connor. Who married John O'Connor, who was an ex-heroin addict that had a miraculous. You must get him on here.
Yeah,
had a miraculous.
I'm trying.
He's a very busy man, though.
I know. I realize
I'm sure you will if you keep pushing.
Yeah.
He had a dramatic conversion in prison, and then eventually married Joanne, so he heads up the Connect communities, and what they are is that what they were doing, they were seeing people coming out of prison and not sticking in the local church.
Yeah.
Are not feeling part, which is a common problem. And so they started these meetings midweek in Newcastle on a night, and they would be predominantly based around worship, testimony, gospel, and food and fellowship.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned 5 things there. They're very much at the core of what Connects are.
Yeah.
And basically they're usually linked in with a lead church. We always want them linked into the local church. So we look for a lead church, but many churches can be involved.
Yeah.
And then obviously we establish a leadership team of people to run the communities.
Yeah.
And like I said, those what the night entails is around those 5 things, and then the aim is to see people come along and ultimately respond to the gospel in a setting where they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've had seen God move powerfully. Some of you know Steve Sewell, who heads up the Eden in Shaftesbury Street.
Yeah.
He came out of Battelle early, but he was still going on with God after about 6 or 7 months. But he'd had an encounter with God in Battelle, and he came along to the Moses Project, which is a drop-in for people with addiction problems over
Yeah.
25. And I was helping out, volunteering during the day, got alongside him, came on an alpha course, invited him to the Connect groups on the evening.
Yeah.
He encountered God. He wanted to cement his faith in discipleship and following God. He got married to his long-term partner,
Mm.
Vanessa,
Mm.
and now is running the Eden Project in Stockton, which, I mean, that Eden, I mentioned about the Eden in Ragworth. Well, the
Yeah.
Eden in Stockton in Shaftesbury Street came out of the Connect,
Amazing. Yeah.
because the Connect creates communities of people.
Mm.
So yes, they're meeting on a night, but there was a group of them that were meeting together in Stockton. So on Shaftesbury Street.
Yeah.
So, and these are, some of them are from the Czech community,
Yeah.
Bertie and Bezena and Radic. Some of them, like I say, are ex-addicts. We've got we've got families that are on that street that have become Christians. Someone who
Amazing.
just got baptized last week, Selena, on Sunday. And but we link them into the Connect where the gospel's presented,
Yeah.
and then I always think it's about partnering. So it's partnering the Connects with Eden,
Yeah.
which is about communities. It's partnering the Connects with the Moses Project, which is what Brian and Stella are in
Yeah.
during the
Amazing.
day.
Yeah.
It's that partnering
Mm.
that brings about fruit. I mean, there's people that have been volunteering in Moses Project who've got saved.
Yeah.
You know, there's Samantha and there's Lynn and there's, people, there's Helen and Scott that have got saved and come to Christ. And some of them go to Brian and Stella's church, which is a Destiny church
Yeah.
in Stockton.
Yeah.
Some others, like the ones on Shaftesbury Street, come to our church.
Yeah.
So it's again, no one's trying to build their own empire.
Yeah.
It's about working together and networking and partnering with other organizations
Yeah.
to bring about change. And that's what brings about, it's the gospel.
Mm.
It's working together, and it's the gospel that penetrates. And we'll see results, because no one does community amongst the poor better than Eden. As far as I'm concerned, in the Northeast, no
Mm.
one does the gospel to broken people coming out of prison and addicts on the street than Connect.
Yeah.
So again, it's that partnering that is so vital
Yeah.
and so important.
Yeah. Amazing.
So
A little
I
bit.
don't know how you find Connect.
Oh, I absolutely love it. I mean, I was a little bit distracted there from what you're saying. I don't know whether you've got the dog going in the background, the barking or whatever it is.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
That's all right. That's okay. Okay. I love
in another
Connect.
room.
I really do look forward to it. I mean, we're all busy people, and you know, I'd love to say that I get the opportunity to go once a month, and I'd love to do more, just to kind of be involved in and lead the worship and but actually I just love being amongst the people, to be honest. And it's great to meet people and in that short time that even when I'm there, just get to know them and just chat with people and just find out a bit more about their story, and just it's great to hang out. The food's good as well. I have to say, I do enjoy the food. That's not the only motivation I have, but it's a popular topic with my good self. But it's great, and it's just brilliant to see. Like you say, the Connect,
And
Brian and Stella.
it's a bridge.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah, it
bridge.
is. Yeah,
It's a bridge into church.
mm,
Not for everyone.
mm,
Some people, Connect will be their church because they're so wrapped up in sort of addictions and
yeah,
the problems, serious mental health problems.
yeah,
For some of them, that will be where they'll sort of
yeah,
not move on from.
yeah.
It's just a fact of life. It's not ideal.
Yeah, when you
But it's
mentioned
just a
earlier on,
fact of
didn't you?
life.
You said that some maybe those with who had spent time in prison, find it difficult to settle in a church for whatever reason, and I completely can understand that. And
but the aim is always to move people on.
yeah,
So for many, they do move on to church for
yeah,
and where they can grow.
mm,
Where they can grow in their faith, where they can grow in their understanding of the gospel
yeah,
to another level.
yeah.
And I think that's so vital and so important.
How did well, I was going to ask you early on? Obviously you mentioned John, and John. Let's just put this comment on screen because he thinks you're doing a marvelous job and explaining things a lot better than he can. So, which is great, So obviously you get a sign of approval there, seal of approval from John. But how did I didn't quite pick up on how did Connect? Obviously that was happening in Newcastle, and John's involvement there. How did that find its way into Stockton? And it was one Middlesbrough as well, isn't it?
I always remember Tony telling me about this meeting in Newcastle. Oh, it must have been about 7, 8 years ago.
Who's this?
Tony
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 Grange.
Grange, who I work with closely.
Yeah, he's another one I've got on
And,
lined up to again.
well,
He's shifting dates on me, but I'm going to try and tie him down. To do a date.
he started coming to our church, and I got to know him. Got very, very good friends with him, and working a lot together.
Yeah.
And then he told me his testimony that he went on this bus. Oh, sorry, I'm digressing a bit.
Sorry.
He went on this bus when he was younger, a coffee bus in Middlesbrough, when he was drunk and he'd been in a fight, and they'd given him tea and coffee and something to eat, and they were trying to tell him the gospel, and it wasn't really penetrating. But anyway, he sort of felt a bit better. Kate went off the bus, and they'd handed him this book, and it was a cross and a switchblade.
Wow.
And he put it on his shelf. Eventually, he got it down and read it, and it transformed his life.
Amazing.
So sometimes you're planting seeds and you don't realize it.
Yeah.
And some of you know Tony and his healing ministry and what he's doing through Middlesbrough Connect.
Yeah.
But anyway, Tony took me up to this meeting in Newcastle where John was leading these Connect groups, this Connect group. And I was really impressed, especially with the worship.
Yeah.
It was just so intense and upbeat and powerful, and it was really impacting.
Yeah.
And then so we formed a relationship over a long period of time with John.
Yeah.
And with Tony, and we'd meet to pray. And eventually we wanted to start something in Teesside. They had a major link with the lighthouse in Middlesbrough that Tony started, that was sort of had links with Connect, but also had links with Eden. And from that, I wanted to do something in Stockton. I was reaching out on the streets of Stockton with Joe Shepherdson. Shepherdson, I don't know if you know Joe.
Yeah.
And he's an amazing guy. We saw that's how it was through reaching out on Stockton High Street that Bertie and Bazena got saved. We prayed for them; they got healed. His back got healed. He had major problems. He'd had surgery in Czech Republic, and it had gone majorly wrong.
Wow.
And he got miraculously healed on the streets of Stockton. We formed that relationship with him, and we've seen God move amongst the Czech community on Shaftesbury Street. So, but it was out of that, those connections with John O'Connor and Tony, that we decided to do one in Stockton as well.
Yeah.
And linking in with Brian and Stella, who also knew John and Joanne O'Connor.
Right.
And it was just the next stage, really, just to do something not only in Middlesbrough, but to do something in Stockton.
Yeah.
And that was about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And God's blessed it ever since. And we've seen, there was sometimes we were seeing up to 100 people on a Thursday night.
Yeah.
A little bit quieter now, with just coming out of a pandemic, but we still see a lot of people come in. So it's good. It's encouraging.
It's amazing. Absolutely.
But I know John's vision is to see Connect started all over. And this is just the beginning, really.
Yeah.
We've got one in Durham. We've got one in Edinburgh. We've got one starting in Gateshead, just in these last few months.
Yeah, amazing.
And then Tony's moved his Connect from, as I said, he's fully got on board now with Connect. So the Lighthouse doesn't happen anymore on Easter side, but we've started a proper Connect in Middlesbrough Town Centre, which I'm also involved in. That's on a Monday night.
Wow.
So I go maybe every other week. So I help a little bit in the leadership there,
Yeah.
just to get it off the ground. So that meets in an old Methodist, well, I think it still is a Methodist church on the corner of Linthorpe Road and Borough Road.
Yeah.
And they're getting a lot of people coming there, and the gospel's being preached to people who wouldn't go anywhere near church, which is amazing.
Amazing stuff. I mean, just to add to that John's there's a vision worldwide. Absolutely. Okay, and it's great to hear how he's going. Maybe we can actually get John, if I can get a date from him, we can get him on and actually he can talk about himself rather than just having to post his comments. But that would be lovely. John, I'm going to keep mentioning this until I get a message from you with a particular date that you can do. I'm just checking my phone now. No, not yet. All right, we'll see what happens, eh? I know he's a busy fella. You're a busy fella as well, aren't you? I mean, what does your typical... I mean, I'm just conscious of the time as well. We are coming towards the end, but what does your typical week look like, Pete? Do you have a typical week?
Well, this morning I've been in prison. I work with Junction 42, and I work with the chaplaincy there.
Yeah.
So we've run alpha courses in there, and obviously during the pandemic we haven't been doing that, but it's just working with the chaplaincy, putting on alpha courses. But just also gives you connections for people coming out.
Yeah.
So a little bit involved. I work one day for Junction 42. My main call now, even though I don't officially work for Eden anymore, I was running the Eden project in Ragworth at one stage until about 4 years ago. And then I've planted this Eden in Shaftesbury Street that Steve runs. So I suppose really under the church's umbrella, my job is to pioneer new ventures, reaching out. But my biggest heart is to raise up leaders. As I say, that taking the poor and turn them into princes is very much at the core of my life. That's my biggest heart, is to grow. I just think when you look at the Gospels, when you look at Jesus' life, he spoke to the multitudes. Right, he preached to the multitudes, but really he was often picking out people, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Peter on the boat while he was preaching to the multitudes. Who else? Zacchaeus, when he told him to come down from a tree. Who else? Bartimaeus picked him out. The woman at the well who went back and brought the whole village.
Yeah.
He just picked out people, and my heart is to pick people out and see the full potential of what. I mean, that might not necessarily make it like Graham to be leaders of ministries, but they can certainly impact, other people through their testimony. Because I think the danger is just getting converts, which they tend not to last.
Yeah.
I think if you sort of like give them a vision for their lives, you'll see them raise up, like Joe Shepherdson, Tony Grange, the guy who's running the community grocers, Andy Malbon. We were reaching out to him when we lived in Eaglescliffe, and it's just Steve Sewell. These people that we want to see raised up, and you want them to do 10 times more than what you've done.
Yeah.
So that they can raise up other people.
Absolutely.
I mean, Steve Sewell's a good example. I mentioned him.
Yeah.
The guy who initially connected with him with the gospel was Graham's ministry.
Right. Amazing.
So you see the knock-on effect.
Yeah.
It's like they met him on the street, sent him to Battelle, came back from Battelle and connected with us.
Yeah.
It's just the message of the gospel goes on and on and on and on. But it should be like that mush. It should be like that domino effect, shouldn't it? Really,
Yeah.
ideally, it should be like that domino effect. I don't think it's. I think it's old school now. Evangelists being at the front of churches and or Billy Graham's, or I mean, they sometimes happen,
Yeah.
but not like they did in the 80s or the 90s. Louis Pilau and people like that. It's through ordinary people reaching out to one.
Yeah.
That's the most effective way. It's one on one. It's one on one.
Yeah.
But you've got to have a vision and a faith to believe that God will raise them up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know why? You know why he does it? Because I've seen him do it in me.
Yeah.
So if he can do it in me, he can do it in somebody else. And that person can also see that he can do it in somebody else and in somebody else and somebody else. And then you get this mushroom, this sort of domino effect.
Mm.
And it's this message that has been going on and on and on down the centuries. It's that effect that has got to go out more and more, especially in the Western world where, church is weaker than South America and parts of Asia.
Yeah.
Because people aren't as committed to communicating the message.
Wow.
But
Love
doing
it.
it in team.
Yeah.
Doing it in team, that's as well. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just conscious that we're coming towards the end now. And as always, it's gone amazingly quickly. Honestly, I'm sure there's so much more that we could chat about, and it's, I just love your passion. I love, obviously it's inspiring, and again, and as always, people, no doubt are kind of tuning in and thinking, I love all of these opportunities that you've been talking about in these ministries, and it's like, how do I, maybe get involved in these as well? You've talked about the Shack, you've talked about Eden, obviously on Shaftesbury Street, you've talked about Connect groups in Newcastle and with John and then, but all of the others like, Gateshead and so on, Middlesbrough, obviously Teesside, Stockton within that as well, being established. Now, you're a guy that, and this is what I was kind of just talking before we came on air, really, about actually what contact details, because, obviously people are no doubt going to be enthused and inspired and think, I want a bit of that, or I want to get in touch with you, Pete, to just to pick your brain. So I've put these contact details on, but, so let me just show them, obviously, on screen for people to get in touch. But these are the church contact details that you're a part of. And obviously, I put the Connect kind of Stockton logo on there as a kind of token gesture. But what's the best way that people can kind of keep up to date then, do you think? With all these amazing things that happen?
Certainly become part of the Stockton Connect. We have a Facebook page called Connect Stockton. We have one for Newcastle as well, Connect Newcastle. One for Middlesbrough, Connect Middlesbrough. And you can come down to one of their meetings on a Monday at 7 o'clock. As I say, the Methodist Church in the corner of Borough Road and Linthorpe Road in Middlesbrough. We're at the Moses Project on Alma Street in Stockton on a Thursday night, 7 o'clock. You can come down, see what we're all about. Take part and just say you want to help and volunteer.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way, to be honest. Come down and have a look, or message me through the Facebook page.
Yeah, Facebook seems to be a good way to obviously keep up to date, as we know. But particularly, those Connect groups as well. Like you say, you've got public groups on there that you can join for the different Connect communities. And it's well worth doing that because, like you say, you get to keep up to date, and see what's happening and the amazing things, how the gospel is being lived out and shared in obviously the things like Facebook pages for the Shack. I like to kind of the community grocers, the Eden projects. I like to kind of like all of those. So I can just keep myself, informed of what's going on and so on. But in terms of actually contacting you, that's the best way. Is it? Would you be open to people sending you a message and things like that?
Yeah, you can have my phone number. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, even on
I don't
Facebook,
mind
just
that
kind
at
of,
all.
seeking you out and, kind of just sending you a message that way and wherever, whichever way is the best way to kind of do
Yeah,
it.
put my phone number on. Put my phone. Certainly, no problem.
Yeah.
Put my phone number on. Or the other way is if you want to contact Brian Jones as well. I work closely with Brian
Yeah.
at the Moses Project on Alma Street. Um, um, but yes, certainly you can certainly put my phone number out there. I don't have a problem. Message me, and I'll get back to them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I will do then is, if anybody, like you say, feel free to get in touch with, follow Moses Project, the Connect groups, etc. Eden Project, do them all. Actually, follow them. I'll encourage you to follow them all. To kind of like the pages and things. But if anybody wants to get in touch with Pete this way, and maybe just leave a comment or direct message, DM the Embrace Church, we'd be more than happy to forward that on to Pete, and obviously they can have a conversation. I won't give out your phone number just obviously publicly for anybody. But we'll just see what happens in terms of those kind of messages and things like that. But definitely, it's well worth following all of these amazing, kind of ministries, opportunities, and get yourself involved. Come, thanks, Pete, for making that, invitation for people to come down and just see what's happening. And it's exciting stuff. I like I say, I absolutely love Stockton Connect in particular.
Oh, we're also going out on the streets of Stockton on the 11th.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah,
9:30. Or we're meeting at the Moses Project on Alma Street, 9:30 on the 11th of December. We're doing a bit of training, a bit of worship, and then we're going out onto the high street in groups of twos and threes to communicate the gospel. And you don't have to be experienced. You don't have to be the initial contactor. You can just be in the background praying on the streets. But it'll be good to just see the gospel at work. John O'Connor's coming down for that. Last in Newcastle, we did it about 4 weeks ago, and we had about 30 people going out in Newcastle city centre with the gospel.
Amazing.
So we're doing that on the 11th of December.
So that's in Stockton, isn't it?
Yeah, in Stockton, yeah. And then in January, we're going to Middlesbrough. But we'll let you know the date on that one.
Fantastic.
The aim is to do it once a month on a Saturday.
Wow. Love it. Pete, thanks so much for obviously giving up you're a busy fellow. I know you kind of move from place to place, but giving up some your evening tonight just to kind of feature on there. I really appreciate it. I mean, I think I can definitely say this with 100% confidence. I've never seen so many people giving a thumbs up and the kind of love emoji, the heart emoji in one episode. So you are currently holding the record for Embrace Live love on screen, or like on the thumbs up and so on, and it's great, obviously. And I think actually what I say this quite often, even though we encourage the questions and things like that, actually it's a sign of somebody's hitting the thumbs up. I can see on my other screen here all the time now, which is great. It's a sign of when people are not asking many questions or comments, they're just totally absorbed in what you're saying, and so, and you can communicate your passion for Jesus and sharing the gospel so well, and it's inspiring, mate. It really is. And so I'd really want to encourage people to, like I say, get in touch with Pete, get in touch with follow the Connect groups, Eden, etc. And obviously it's great to hear from people. I'll put Radic on screen as well, just the kind of things he's just sharing with us on there. So it's brilliant. All right,
good friend Radic.
Okay, amazing guy. And just one last thing, I just want to finish by saying, John O'Connor,
he got saved at Stockton Connect.
He did, yeah. John O'Connor, I want a date from you, and I'm going to keep hounding you until you give me a date. So, because we've mentioned you a number of times tonight, so hopefully that'll do. The kind of peer pressure, the public pressure, and so on. Thank you ever so much, mate. I really appreciate that. It's been amazing.
Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
It's been a privilege.
Have you enjoyed it? Has it been all right?
Yeah, it's been great.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, listen, next week, if you join in 8 o'clock Wednesday, like I say, put it in your diary. You can always catch up if you can't make it live. But thank you ever so much for another great evening, and we'll see you next week.